What does it take to make workshops work? And how can we facilitate collaboration that sticks and leads to results? Today with me on the show are Pete and Tuulia, facilitators and trainers of Radical Honesty, a workshop that I have visited as a participant last year and that has really left me with a very deep impression. So I'm glad that they're sharing the details and the method of what it means to be truly ourselves and to communicate radically honest from our heart and from a place of compassion, and what it can do to ourselves, to groups, to our relationships, and to life. Stay tuned. And don't forget to scroll down to the show notes to find the links to more information, how to connect to the guests, and to subscribe to the workshop if you enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for listening. Tuulia and Pete, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm very happy to have you here because I attended your Radical Honesty workshop with my partner end of last year. And I think it's been one of those workshops that really changed so much in my life and made me a better person, better communicator. And I think I was able to find peace with people and resolve conflict in ways that I wouldn't have, I think, without your tool. So I'm super excited to have you here today to speak about radical honesty and the work you're doing. No
Sounds
pressure
good.
at all. No pressure. And
Thank you for having us.
yeah. And I'm always starting at the beginning with the same question. When did you start calling yourself facilitators? And actually, do you?
I do sometimes. I use the title trainer quite a lot. But yeah, when I work, I do facilitate. And I especially would say I facilitate conversations and connections between people or disconnections, supporting them to find connections. So in that sense, yes. And when? So I've been doing this work for 10 years. I don't remember if I called myself facilitator in the early years. Yeah, quite a few years by now. And sometimes I call myself as a therapist as well, which is my training.
Yeah, I'm a couple of years behind Tuulia in this work. So doing it for 7 or 8 years. And in the workshops, I definitely call myself a facilitator, facilitating conversations, as Tuulia said. Other times outside the workshop, facilitating conversations between couples or people who want to talk to their parents about the so-called unfinished emotional business, and they feel that they'd be better supported by having a third party, someone to facilitate the conversation. So yeah, I love calling myself a facilitator.
Thank you. And now, without going too deep maybe in the distinction, but I would be curious, when you put the label of a facilitator as opposed to a therapist or a coach, maybe, on the conversations that you have, does it make a difference in terms of the methods you're using?
I don't use coaching quite so much, or coach, because oftentimes that's quite solution oriented. And I don't want to be attached to one particular outcome or that I'm somehow offering the solution or there's a particular pathway, but rather supporting people to find themselves what is the path, what is how they actually just have that release in their system and find out something more or something comes up. And yeah, I don't offer group therapy. So it's clear that even though what we do can have very therapeutic impacts, what we do in the workshop setting, it's not therapy. And the format is not like such a long focus on one individual. So it just doesn't quite work in that sense.
Yeah, a lot of our work in groups, in our workshops, in our retreats, at times is very interpersonal. So people getting triggered by other people, being attracted to other people, angry with other people, connected, disconnected, whatever. So in that way, we're facilitating that sort of connection, that sort of communication or conversation, exploring together, supporting them to get to a better place together, to understand what's going on with them, what might be the root underneath their trigger with this other person. So sometimes it's very interpersonal and sometimes it's very intrapersonal, where we're just focusing on that person. In a way, with the group it's a handy way using the interpersonal connection or whatever to see what's really going on with the person and exploring there. And in that way, yeah, not really a therapist. We have this title, trainer. We put it on our website for trainers. And if you ask me, what are we training? I don't know.
Skills to be a human with all there is, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm thinking
we're supporting people to sort of be themselves very much in ways that they don't allow themselves to be, especially with other people. And once we sort of give that permission through various exercises and stuff, building the safety of the container, what comes out, then we're kind of supporting them to allow that to be and to own it, and then see what happens after that, especially if they're sort of stuck somewhere, keeping them stuck. So facilitating all of those processes to happen. I don't know. I don't think I've really thought so much about the titles I use.
No. That's okay. And I like how it just emerged because we got some breadcrumbs now that we can pick up. And maybe start at the radical honesty. Because what I realized was when I joined the training or the workshop, I thought that it's about being honest to others. And what I found is, that's only one part. The more important part is actually to be honest to myself.
Yeah.
So what does it mean, the radical honesty title, and what is the underlying method or idea, if not even ideology?
Well, for us, because of course, everybody is the personalities they are, so it varies by the trainer how the workshops exactly look like. But for us, it is really about this embracing all that there is, moment to moment, in you. So everything is welcome, and that could be then also uncomfortable emotions like anger, sadness, or something uncomfortable in the body. So uncomfortable sensations, tiredness, tension, shaking, crying, all of this. And we don't want to label things as good and bad, but rather we all have these things. We all have anger, we all have joy, we all have sadness, we have all we have shame, we all feel attracted to other people. So rather than keeping it like private or a secret or trying to somehow bullshit is not there, it's like embracing it, owning it, sharing it. And then any of these things don't like overrule or have power over who we are. We are so like multifaceted beings and dynamic and all the time changing. So one way to say it for me would be welcoming all that there is and even digging deeper. So what's underneath?
Yeah, I like all that. And also just a basic tenet of this work is that we create a lot of stress and disconnection and loneliness and sadness, withholding what's really going on for us. We think we're doing very well by not showing certain parts of ourselves to other people. People don't want to see my anger, my loneliness, my shitty self-talk or whatever. So I'm going to keep that down. I'm going to show the world my happy, cheery self, parts that I think the world wants to see, the other people want to see. And then we create all sorts of loneliness and disconnection, I said, by doing so. And when in our workshops and our retreats, when we open this setting, you can show all parts of yourself. And what happens, quite scary, showing these other parts of ourselves and then seeing, oh, actually, I can not only survive other people's judgments or other people's thoughts about me, seeing me as I am, I can actually quite bizarrely become more connected to other people when I share these parts of ourselves, and then spend far less time stressing ourselves like, oh, I'm going to be found out with all these things I'm keeping hidden in myself. So yeah, it's quite incredible that we lead people into the very places they don't want to go to and keep them stuck there in a way, keep them focused there, having all that heat in their body, all that nervousness, that tension, the shakiness or whatever. And then the amazing thing of seeing them work through that and get to a deeper place of connection with themselves, connection with others, more self-acceptance, more ability of celebrating themselves and just being themselves. It's kind of the basis of what we're doing is just be yourself. Sounds so simple, and yet
so difficult.
As humans, we've learned all sorts of ways how not to do that.
Yeah, because very often we learned in the hard way, right? So when we are ourselves, sometimes very early on, when we are children, we are too much, we are too loud. we're not enough. And then we take this into adulthood. And even at work, and I was mentioning before, I'm writing this book called Unprofessionalism, where I claim that we need to bring more of ourselves and our authentic selves back to work.
Mm-hmm.
And still, it's not always received that way. So when I'm just trying to imagine I'm someone who has never come in touch with radical honesty. And then you claim, oh, you can just be yourself and say what you're angry about and what you're sad about and what you're anxious about. And then there's also this other person who has to receive it. So how important in the process is actually the other person to hear it? Or can I talk to a chair or talk to you in a group without this other person? And what's the difference?
I would say both are valuable. So sometimes it's not possible or appropriate to talk directly to the other person. And when you talk about workplace, there might be certain agreements and codes and even time considerations where it's just not possible. And I wouldn't do any like heavy or serious conversations in a rush or in a place that doesn't feel like safe and spacious somehow and private. So in some cases, it just doesn't make sense. Or it's not possible. And I would say in the situation where it is possible to talk face to face, that's always the best option. And it's not about dumping some stuff on the other, but rather it is a connection and communication. So I share something that is personal to me. And I prefer personally always share my motivation too. So like I'm sharing this because you're important to me. I'm sharing this because I don't want to keep secrets from you. I'm sharing this because this is bothering me and I don't want this to be between us. Or I want to share something that is really difficult for me. Are you willing to hear me? And then I give the other one option to decide. And most times people say yes, and sometimes of course they're not willing to hear me. Then I might check in if there's another better moment. And in some cases it's just never okay for them for whatever reason, whatever history they have. And then I need to decide how I go about it. Do I talk with a facilitator? Do I talk to an empty seat? Do I do something else to release? But I think it's important to release from the body, actually physically and verbally, whatever is stuck there, so that I don't like carry just more and more heavy loads, like kind of putting more rocks in my backpack for everything I don't say that my system needs to get out. So we don't want to have more and more rocks. We rather want to take the rocks out so that we are kind of more light, more present, being able to live more in the here and now and not in the past, hurt and upset and worries and grudges against other people.
Yeah, this idea of radical honesty is, for some people, upon hearing it first, of, oh, I see, you just blurt everything out and let the world deal with whatever happens after it leaves your mouth. And that's not what we teach. That's not our focus. I would call that brutal honesty, walking on the street saying, oh, you're fat and you're a piece of shit, or, hey, get out of my way, slow walker, or whatever. That's not the idea here. The idea here is sharing everything. So if you do have some judgment about someone being fat or something, sharing everything that's about that for you, like, oh, I notice I'm worried about sharing this with you. I worry that you'll take this negatively, or you'll hurt yourself in some way with some thoughts about this, or you'll want to disconnect from me. And that's not my intention. My intention is that I've had these judgments about you, and I don't want to keep them from you. I notice when I see your body that I have these judgments about you being overweight. And I also recognize that this is also about me, that I have a lot of negative self-thoughts about my body, and it's easier for me to outsource that to you to comment on your body, whereas really I don't want to be thinking about the size of my body or so many other things that might be going on, as opposed to just saying you're fat and pointing your finger at someone. So that's our idea of radical honesty, is sharing all of that, remaining present with the other person, which meaning, hey, I'm not just firing cannonballs over my fortress walls at you. I'm actually opening my fortress gates and inviting you in, and for you to share anything that you want. Oh, are you angry at me for saying that I said that stuff about your body? I'm willing to stay and listen to you about that. And if you're angry at me, staying present through that as well, until we hopefully get to a better place out of a desire to deepen the connection, rather than, expressing your anger or judgments in a way that I'm safe here on my side of the fortress, you deal with whatever happens when I lob my cannonballs over the fortress walls. So yeah, very different aspect.
Yeah.
Or between brutal honesty and radical honesty, I think.
And it's such an interesting example where what I hear is when we have a judgment about a person's weight, to pick up your example, then it will color our perspective on them, our behavior towards them, our communication. Maybe we'll avoid them, maybe we'll be distant, and they will notice, but won't know why this is. So by articulating it, we at least have something that they don't have to overthink it. And I think here it becomes challenging because I also realized that by articulating it, we make it about ourselves. So there's a huge amount of self-awareness required. Because to come back to what Tuulia said, it's always with a purpose. I want you to know because I want to have a better relationship with you. It's not I want to share because I want you to change.
Yeah. And if that is the motivation, then I would say that out loud. Hey, I want you to be different. And then I would still add, and it's not in my power to make you any different. And then I might make requests not from an angry place, but from a place, okay, this is not quite working for me or something like that. And then the other one is still totally free to say yes or no to my requests. But I think requests are very different than any kind of demands or angry requests or anything like that. So again, what is the motivation for me to share? Do I share because I want to get over something, or do I share because I want you to change? And both can be okay, but I need to be very clear because the other one needs to know, and then they can choose. And I don't really have an option that I like you if you're different. I have an option I like you as you are, or I don't like you as you are. But in the options there is you need to be different for me to like you. No, I need to choose here within myself.
Yeah, it's a very basic thing we coach people to say is, I want you to be different, period. They might have a whole lot of judgment, a whole lot of explanations about why the person should be different. And we just cut them short to just say, hey, just tell the other person I want you to be different. And I don't have the power to make you different. And then coaching the other person saying, oh, I want you to be different too. Just owning that, already a lot can shift. Instead of somehow being stuck to our story of, if I explain enough, if I argue enough, my case good enough, then you will change. We simply don't have the power to get people to change as much as we want.
And it's so funny because it's so simple. I want you to be different.
Yeah.
I would imagine that in 99.9% of the cases, every individual on Earth we look at, we would like them to be different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The workshop I just led last weekend, I coached someone to express that to someone else because they did want them to be different. I think they wanted them to stop talking, or they didn't like the amount that they were talking. And they felt a bit shamed when I said that, had them say that, I want you to be different. Like, no, that doesn't feel quite right to me. And when I shared what you just said, well, we all want pretty much everyone else to be different. And just about everybody else in the room raised their hands saying, yes, I want even you to be different. And it was quite an eye-opener for that person to realize, oh, okay, yeah, somehow I've been silently walking around wanting the whole world to be different. If only everybody else in the world could be how I want them to be, the world would be a perfect place. And yet everyone's thinking that of them as well.
And by saying it out loud, it kind of loses the power. I don't like that particular thing about you so much. And I'm owning it, I'm sharing it, and it's about me. And at the end of the day, I'm noticing it's not such a big deal. And it could be like, I want you to be different, and I like you. Like, okay, they're both there. Or even, I want you to be different, and I don't want you to be different. So both are alive in me. I do embrace who you are and how you are. And then there's also the part of me that wants you to be different. And yeah, that's how we're often a bit contradictory as human beings.
And then sometimes we want people to be different and we don't like them. So even if they were different, we wouldn't like them. So
exactly. So it's not even really try to change people. That's just not the thing, but the full expression of whatever is there. And then one thing I think the big learning for me was after I express, I stay present. So I don't run away. I allow the other one to share whatever they are sharing. It might be very uncomfortable, very difficult for me. I might feel all kinds of tightness in my body, and I'm staying. And then I start to notice the shift in me. Okay, I say something that was really difficult. Maybe I got a reaction. that was reaction of upset or anger or sadness or acceptance. And then I'm like, it wasn't quite as difficult as I thought. Our head is not really our friend in this difficult interpersonal relationships. We make like the worry is so much bigger than the reality of sharing something most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't often check in with what the other is going on with the other person, if our worry is founded or true or whatever. So we do regularly coach people in the workshops to express themselves, express their fear or worry, check in with the other person. Is that other person judging them negatively, for example? We spend so much time with our systems being run by our fears and worries about others or perceiving us, judging us, and yet we don't spend much time actually checking in. Are those stories true? And if they're not true, there's a lot of liberation there. Oh, the world's actually not seeing me this way, or these people are not seeing me this way. Or if it is true, then dealing with that instead of the fear or worry with the thought. Actually deal with what arises when someone's facing them, saying, "Yeah, I do judge you negatively in the way or that way," and through actually facing it, then something can shift for them. They can deal with it.
And most times people are not quite as much focusing on everything about us. Like we go around worrying, oh, they don't like this and they don't like that and they don't like my shirt and they don't like my hair and they don't like my tone of voice or choice of wording. And then often when I check in, it's like, I didn't pay much attention because I was kind of focusing on my own thing. Or so everybody's busy worrying, but maybe not about the thing I think they're worrying or thinking about.
Yeah. I want to share an example also to make it maybe more tangible for the audience. I faced an issue with a friend of mine where we're on the phone and I realized that I get very angry because she was asking me, would you mind doing some groceries before we leave on a weekend trip? And I didn't have time and I felt a little bit of a tension already before in our conversations. And then I said, yeah, actually, I would mind because I don't have the time and I don't have the capacity to carry these things. And then I realized that there was the silence that you can sense that, something is growing. And I felt very uncomfortable and very angry. Like, why are we not speaking about it? Why are you asking me if I would mind if then you're not happy with one of the answers and all of that? So when we met, I asked for the time and said, okay, I noticed that when I said I would mind, it felt as if it wasn't okay for me to say that. And it made me angry. And I'm wondering, and now I don't want to go on a weekend with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have the impression that it's something between us. And it was extremely uncomfortable to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And it helped then to unpack that there was actually a history. And that the would you mind was actually a different version of can you please help me? But can you please help me felt vulnerable and didn't feel safe in their vocabulary.
Yeah.
And what was then interesting, and I would be curious about your perspective, because then I explained what it was that I would need in order to feel more comfortable in going on this weekend trip. And then the reply was, yes, I understand that this is all that you need, but what about my needs?
Yeah.
And then I was like, I don't know if you tell me that I'm happy to take care of your needs, but I cannot predict and I cannot assume your expectations.
Yeah. And did they share the needs with you?
I think it was then a more difficult conversation that they realized that it's very difficult for them to actually express their needs or to know their needs because of a lot of conditioning.
Yeah, right. Fair enough.
Yeah. I appreciate you for having that conversation with your friend and for sharing that with us. It sounds like a lot going on there. Even just starting off with that phrase, would you mind?
Which sounds like an open question, where there can be answer, yes, I would, or no, not at all.
And that's said from a very vulnerable place, meaning I want you to do the shopping, putting the emphasis on you immediately. Would you mind?
Yeah.
And I suppose I want you to. And then opening themselves up to a yes or no from you. But as Tuulia said, there didn't seem to be much room for a no with that language. And then, the difficulty for asking for what they want. That's beautiful that your friend was able to access that about themselves and share that with you. And the tension that you said, oftentimes we don't lean into that. We don't go there. We try to brush that aside, put that behind us. And as Tuulia mentioned, this thing about putting pebbles in our backpack, each time we do that, especially in our romantic relationships with our work colleagues, with our family members, we swallow this one, we swallow that one, we put a little pebble in our backpack until that backpack becomes quite heavy and burdens us. And yeah, there's a lot more disconnection between us. We actually, when we see that friend or family member messaging us, we're like, oh, I'd actually rather not pick up, or I'd rather not go on a weekend trip with this person. There's too many pebbles there. And sounds like by having this conversation with your friend, you sort of addressed one of those pebbles. And maybe there's other things from the past between the two of you that there's still yet to unpack. I don't know. But that's something we work with regularly, is addressing those smaller things before they become a big thing, especially the past hurts, past anger. The more we can deal with that from the past, the less likely we are to carry that into our new relationships or into that same relationship. Or when something arises in the moment with that person, it doesn't become about all of the past stuff. It's just about that one thing that they said or they did, or you said or you did.
Yeah, I think this power of dealing with the past, like I don't think anybody has a perfect childhood. There's always something, and for some it's even a lot bigger. And then we have, like you said, the conditioning, but then it's like how I start to unpack it, and in the safe environment with friends and loved ones to own, like, yeah, it's super difficult for me to recognize what I want and ask for it. And this is personal example. So for me, yeah, I went around like more than 35 years of my life, not really at all recognizing, acknowledging, checking in what I want. So I couldn't even ask for it because I didn't know, because it wasn't my focus in life. Yeah, exactly. So this kind of, I call myself a recovering people pleaser, that I chose to learn to recognize, notice in my body, what is a yes, what is a no, what I like, wish and desire, and then voice it out and be with that fear, actual fear, like they might say no. And that can be a bit terrifying. And then my system getting more and more relaxed. They sometimes say no, and I survive, and it's okay. Sometimes they say yes. I get so many things by just asking. Is amazing. And then with the no, getting to a place where I celebrate the no. Oh, thanks for saying no. Now I trust your yes more. And when you say no, I know I can say no to you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what a relief. Like the chest areas is like relaxing, and
And since sometimes when we listen to a podcast, we don't hear every single word. And I just want to re-emphasize that. Thank you for the no, because now I trust your yes more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And we sometimes forget that people could actually appreciate our boundaries.
Yeah, I call it celebrating the no, that the aim is to be in a place where I celebrate the no. My no and no of other people. Like, thank you for sharing that. Thanks for being real with me. Thanks for daring.
And it also gives them the permission to set their boundaries. Because what happened with my friend, actually, we got not pebbles out of our backpacks, we got big stones out of our backpacks. Because from there, I shared what annoyed me, then they could share what annoyed them. And then we realized, okay, it's difficult to state what we need. I don't want to guess. I don't want this to be my responsibility. And suddenly to unpack and to find this compassion. Can I help you to find out what you need?
Yeah.
And to state that. And I think that's now our friendship is even deeper, and we could go on this trip together.
Awesome.
Amazing.
And one thing that it reminded me was an activity that we did in your workshop, where in pairs we had 15 minutes or so to ask the other person to do what we wanted. I want you to. I want you to listen to me. We had one example, I want you to buy me a tea. And the other person can say yes or no. What was the idea behind this activity? And maybe you can help us unpack that, how we can train ourselves to better know what we want and why it's actually beneficial to articulate that.
Yeah. Well, we do it for several reasons. And one is as you mentioned already, I think how vulnerable it is for us to ask for what we want. That's quite a scary place. Again, we're kind of showing ourselves what's happening in us, and now giving the other person permission to say yes or no, or to judge us negatively. Oh, you're selfish, or you're needy, or you're asking again, or you're asking too much. That's a scary place to be. And so we don't often share that about ourselves. We don't want the other person to know that about us. So we tend to ask questions more framed like, would you mind, ... putting the emphasis on the other person, the burden on that person, or also trying to leave it to other people to read our minds. They should know this about me. They should know that I like this kind of cake on my birthday. I've said in the past, so they should know this year I want that cake too. Yet we don't ask. We, again, leave the burden to the other person to try to figure us out. And hearing that no is, while Tuulia is saying she celebrates the no, for many people to get to that place is quite scary. To hear the no means rejection, disconnection, negative judgments. Even in a romantic relationship, the end of the relationship, my first wife, I was very skillful in making sure I didn't ask for things that she might possibly say no, because a couple times when she did say no, I was like, oh shit, what is happening now? I'm not comfortable here. I wasn't able to celebrate the no. Instead, I took that as a rejection.
And just a quick addition, we even say extra points if you get a no. You get a bonus points if you get a no in that exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So in a kind of a bit more safe environment, in a setting, practice that. Practice getting no, noticing your body and just being with that. And then maybe sharing, yeah, I feel heard that you said no, or, oh, okay, that's a no, then I ask for something else. So just kind of staying with that.
And we get so used to not asking for what we want. Again, going back to the idea that you mentioned earlier about how we were treated as children, getting some sort of message that at first, when we're small babies, of course, we don't limit ourselves. We cry when we don't get what we want. At some point, we get a message, quite strong message, that that's bad or that's wrong. We're asking too much. We're too needy or greedy or selfish. And we try to limit ourselves. That to be a good human being is not to ask too much of other people. And what we end up getting is not what we want. We want things, we're maybe not even aware of it, but somehow we celebrate ourselves. I celebrated myself in my first marriage by playing the game of whoever asked for the least is somehow the winner. And somehow I prided myself on not bothering my then wife. And yet what I ended up getting was not what I wanted, because I didn't even let her know. Didn't even give her the option to say yes or no. Didn't even let her know what was happening in my head in those moments. But with this exercise, we want to help support people to strengthen both not only asking for what they want, but noticing what it is that they want. Some people even struggle with that part of it. They spend so much time never asking for what it is that they want from other people that they can't even access what it is that they want.
And then one other part is really important is being asked. So how do I react when I'm asked? And in this exercise, we don't want people to automatically go, yes, 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 yes. Like many people, they're so helpful and so yes, yes. No, you take 4 seconds, checking with your body. Does it feel a true yes? Or is it a no? Or is it, yeah, it's okay. And then in this exercise, we don't want people to go with, yeah, I can do it for you kind of thing. No, full body, full yes. Or otherwise it's a no. And then just experimenting and noticing how different it feels in our system when something is a true yes and when something is either a clear no or I'm not really feeling it and I can do it for you kind of thing. Because we so many times do that as well. And then making a clear choice. Like, yeah, in this time frame, I'm not going to go that way. In my life, I might sometimes decide to do something for the other that I don't really feel like. But then also that coming from awareness, it's kind of very different. This is a service to you versus I do it because I need to, because it's not such a big deal, because it's not such a burden. And yeah, then we end up doing a lot of stuff that we don't want to do.
In our relationship, even though I'm far more practiced these days of asking for what I want, there was early in the relationship where just this concept was baffling to me, that I certainly didn't want to bother Tuulia with what it is that I want. At one time, I found myself lying in bed reading my book at night. I didn't want to get out of bed to go brush my teeth to get my toothbrush, so I thought, what would be ideal if I just laid here with my book and Tuulia brought me my toothbrush ready for me. And then I thought, well, why not just go ahead and ask that? And I felt some tightness in my belly just thinking about that. Oh, she's going to say, "Would you lazy pig? What are you doing? You can't even get out of bed. I'm not your maid. I'm not your mother. What's wrong with you?" And, well, that might happen. I don't know. I'm not even giving her the option to say that or not say that. Let's see what happens. So I asked her, "Tuulia, I'm quite comfortable where I am right now. I do want to brush my teeth. I don't want to get out of bed to go get my toothbrush. Are you willing to get my toothbrush for me?" And she said, yeah, I'm willing to do that. And I remember just this wave of almost confusion, so many different sensations in my body, trying to comprehend, that somehow I wasn't even expecting that a yes. I was more like exactly how much of a negative judgment it would be. And I checked in with her. I worry that you're thinking that I'm a lazy pig or that I'm treating you like my maid or something like that. And she said, "No, I'm getting my own toothbrush anyway in a moment, so I'm willing to get yours too." I said, "Oh, wow, that is amazing." And then I asked her again another night, and then again another night, and it got easier for me. And I think one or two nights she said no because she was doing something else. And then I thought, this is easier. And you know what would be even better if she brought me my toothbrush while I'm lying in bed is if she came and brushed my teeth for me. I just want to keep reading my book, and I don't even want to brush my teeth. I'll do it myself. So I asked her, "Yeah, I want you to bring my toothbrush, and I notice tightness in my belly, and I worry you'll say no, and I worry that you'll judge me negatively, and so on. And I want you to actually brush my teeth for me." Then she said, I'm willing to bring you a toothbrush, and no, I don't want to brush your teeth. I'm not willing to do that." So I got to know about that. And I don't know how long ago that was, but 8 years ago. And I've still asked since. I've still got it. I haven't got a yes yet to her brushing my teeth. And yet there are times when I do feel it and I do ask it. And so far it's been.
In 20 years, I'll do it, sweetheart.
Okay. Well, you won't have a choice in 20 years when I'm.
Exactly.
Okay.
And thank you. And I love how you describe what's happening in your body. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that you're using this a lot, these body sensations. And I am someone that a year ago, if you asked me, where do you feel it in your body, I would point at my head. Mm-hmm. I only feel it there. I can think about my feelings, but I don't feel them in my body. And I think the sensations were always there, was just not paying attention. So when you say that we are feeling a yes or we are feeling a no, how would you help someone who is not connected to their body to get that, to get a better feeling?
Ours is certainly very much a body-based practice. One theory we have is that the reason why we don't express ourselves more fully is we don't want to feel the discomfort in our bodies. We express something directly to someone and they respond with anger or sadness or rejection or something. I mean, some tightness in my belly, some sweatiness, my heart racing. I'd rather just keep quiet on the subject than experience that, or conveniently avoid subjects with our partners, with our family members. So becoming aware of the discomfort in our body and then becoming more comfortable with the discomfort. So here I am again. My partner's angry at me because I'm talking about this subject and I'm surviving. These things do tend to shift in our bodies. And in a minute or two, the very thing that we did not like might be gone. That would then directly address your question.
Well, I can say, like, for me, it's about practice. So how to notice your body, practice. So first notice the small things. So we all have sensations. Like now, I notice some pressure in my butt against the seat, some pressure in my thighs. Oh, I notice the hair touching my neck. I notice some warmth in my face. So just noticing anything. We don't say that it needs to be big or remarkable or something. So just noticing, oh, now I notice a little tightness in my stomach. I notice my shoulders going down. And then kind of learning, okay, what are the signals? And in general, like a yes signal for me would be something like expansion, warmth, relaxation, something like easy and flowing in my body. The air is breathing. And then a no or fear or anger would be something more tightness, tension, constriction, maybe something in the throat, sometimes something in the jaw. So yeah, that kind of more less free space somewhere in the body. And I think by practice we'll notice. So our body is very wise and it gives a lot of signals. And if we don't listen, then it gives louder signals, including pain, even chronic pain, stuff like that. So it's there.
Burnout.
A lot of the facilitation we do in our workshops and retreats are about supporting people to deepen their experience, whatever that may be. A lot of times that's experiencing emotions, and many of us aren't very skillful at experiencing our emotions. Like you mentioned about yourself, Miriam, and I can identify that with myself as well. I was very much in my head, my mind telling me what matters the most. Even my mind is superior to my body. What does my body matter? That's what's up here that matters. And yet this wealth of information that our body is sending to our brain is very important. And the more we can tap into that, as Tuulia said, the more we can be aware of whatever it is that we're experiencing, including our emotions, our emotional state. So noticing when sadness is arising in us, noticing when anger is arising in us, joy or attraction, whatever. And we facilitate people to notice that, notice the thoughts associated with their emotion, the physical sensations, noticing with their emotions, deepening that experience, and then moving through that experience. So then they are open to having a new experience instead of stuck with some experience that they don't want to have. Instead, leaning into it. We're doing that over and over again in our workshops, going into the experiences that people would rather not have or avoiding having. And part of that is by paying attention to the physical sensations. And many people who come into our workshops, that's a bit alien for them. Why do I care what's happening in my body? And by the end of the workshop, they kind of get the drift of it. Oh, in any given moment, I can experience what's happening in my body. I can experience what's happening in my environment, what I see or hear. Especially, I can experience my thoughts moment to moment as thoughts, not necessarily as reality. And I can notice my sensations. That's the basis of our work. We're a noticing practice, noticing our sensations, our environment, our thoughts, our emotions, moment to moment to moment. And then sharing that aloud when you're in connection with other people.
Yeah. And I'd be curious to hear so if someone is listening, like, oh, I'm curious. I don't know whether I'm ready yet to sign up for a course, but I want to experiment. So what are maybe the pitfalls if someone wants to experiment? And how do we prepare ourselves to maybe step into the space if the person that we're talking to might not have the openness, self-awareness, might feel offended?
Yeah.
Well, there's no guarantee how hard you try that somebody will never feel offended. So that's one thing, kind of crack the illusion of I have control or power over other people's feelings or reactions. I don't. And then it comes down to, start with what is your motivation for sharing something? And share it like in as open and vulnerable way as possible. Because I judge that most times openness invites openness. So if I'm open, like I feel nervous saying this, most times the reaction is like, oh, you can tell me, or something like that. Or they might be, you can tell me and I'm feeling tense and please tell me anyway.
So not as a manipulative way of, I'm nervous, so therefore you can't be angry at me, or yes.
Yeah, in a way of just being real with the other. So motivation, anything vulnerable that is related to my sharing. And then, asking for consent if that feels like appropriate or needed. Hey, if it's something difficult. But then also practice something not difficult, or maybe it is difficult, like appreciations. How often we share direct appreciation to our loved ones, and very concrete ones. I appreciate you for being my friend. I appreciate you for the way you're looking at me right now. I appreciate you for how often you're listening to me. I appreciate you for doing this and that fun stuff with me. So that's also one side of the coin, not only the heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it so difficult for us to share, appreciate? I was hosting a workshop this morning about conflict, and I mentioned exactly that we are not being appreciative enough with each other to create the space where we can also have healthy conflict. Why is it so difficult?
One theory we have is that anger is such a heavy emotion. I mean, we all experience all sorts of emotions. We were taught quite well early and often that anger is somehow not welcomed, and yet so we kind of push that down. We don't show it. We think that's good. We think even that's feminine or ladylike for many people if they don't show it. And yet, when we're stuck with that anger, we're not expressing it. It's there. It's hard for us to access the appreciation. And our theory is that when we are able to access the anger, express it, sort of has a full body experience of expressing the anger, being specific about what the other person said or did that you're angry at them about, noticing your body, noticing the shifts in your body, noticing when you're getting over the anger, getting to a place of forgiveness. What happens then is you're able to access what you appreciate the other person for. That's one theory why I don't think we're very skillful at expressing our appreciation, because we're kind of stuck with some of the other emotions. Another reason, not many of us were taught very well how to do that. Even I'm embarrassed to say that I was 23 or 24 years old when a girlfriend was expressing compliments to me, and she noted that any compliment she gave me, I swiftly batted it away, like, "Oh no, it's no big deal," or "Oh, no need to thank me for that," or whatever. And she said, "No compliments land with you." And I'm like, "Oh shit." I thought that's a good thing. I thought you're supposed to bat away compliments. And for her, she was frustrated. I'm trying to connect with you here. I'm trying to show appreciation to you, and you're not letting me. Somehow I got some sort of message that was a good thing, to not get too heavily involved in the compliments. We're also not very good at being specific about what we appreciate people for. We tend to say things that sound nice, like, "Oh, it's so wonderful that you're such a wonderful, glowing person," or "your glowing energy," or I don't know, very flowery talk that the other person doesn't know what the fuck we're talking about when we say that. As opposed to some of these examples that Tuulia just gave. I appreciate you for looking at me right now. I appreciate you for that gift. Well, oftentimes we think we don't need to express the appreciation because it's so small. It happened so long ago. I told them once already that I appreciate them for this or that. Even if the appreciation is still ongoing, well, I told them once 7 years ago, so why would I tell them again? Yet, I think it's amazing to be able to have ongoing appreciation expressed out loud, especially in our closest relationships.
And I think there is two other things. One is that many of us just didn't learn it at home. So we don't have an example of just, there might be like, "I love you," or "you're important to me," that kind of thing, hopefully from parents to children or between the parents. But then like genuine appreciation that are not like, "You're a good boy, good girl," that kind of thing. "You did well." Rather than, "I actually appreciate you for how you are, who you are, and not your performance." So that's something we didn't maybe learn. And then another thing is, for whatever reasons and insecurities, many of us keep a tab. If I give you far more compliments, and if I more often express love or something like that, I'm kind of losing. So I shouldn't say it too much, because then the other one, some weird way, gets like power over me. And these are just, in my mind, mental games. And I think I receive more the more love and appreciation and care I share. Because my worldview is not such that people can bash me and harm me by my kind and nice words. How could they do that? I'm like confident enough in my, and of course I don't, maybe if I don't know somebody at all, I don't say exactly quite the same things as with the people who are very close to me. And still, I don't think it can harm me. And somehow subconsciously, these kind of beliefs do run us, that it should be somehow balanced. And if you say one thing, I should need to immediately return the compliment or return the whatever.
Yeah.
Appreciation.
the appreciation.
Yeah, what I hear is that we also unlearn to accept them, and then it's just not fun. If it's like someone is giving us a gift and we're constantly returning it, at some point we stop giving gifts.
Yeah, or that, they give me appreciation because they want something. So there's a tendency of some kind of
it's dangerous
manipulation kind of thing. I'm saying this for the purpose of XYZ, which goes to the asking for what you want. So indirect asking is like, oh, you're such a great masseur, and it was amazing last week when you massaged my shoulders, and you're so talented with that, which in my mind is just dropping hints or manipulation. I'm sharing something, but I'm not being direct with it, which is I want you to massage my shoulders today.
Yeah.
So it's not a clean compliment. It's not clean appreciation. There's something underneath. And the other one smells it, of course. It doesn't come across in the same way as, you're such an amazing masseur, and I really loved you when you did last week.
And it's interesting because then again, usually we have a body reaction when this happens. That something doesn't feel quite right. We've sensed that there are strings attached.
Yeah. And that goes to the body sensation. Our bodies are so wise. Yeah. They do, like you said, there's a body reaction. The body never lies, as we tend to say. When the body has a reaction, there's something to look at, like, something is not quite okay here for me.
I shared with a colleague about the radical honesty, and we were discussing about the complementary between radical honesty and nonviolent communication. And it felt almost as if radical honesty is more about us. So the introspection and the nonviolent communication is more focused on the other one and their needs. How do you bring these two? Because I have also the impression that if you master both methods, then you can be radically honest in expressing what it is that you need in a way that is also nonviolent and then easier to receive for the other person. What is your...
Well, neither one of us are NVC trainers, so I can't speak too much specifically about NVC. Although the idea of focusing on the other seems to be, and I could get this wrong, a bit of mind reading, like what do I think the other person needs? Or that focusing on other people is somehow, if whatever is going on them is more important than what's going on with me. And what I do know is what's happening in me, or if I'm, getting better and better, it's more skillful at understanding myself. I can share that. I can understand that, or I can explore that. I feel a little uncomfortable trying to talk about what happens with NVC.
Well, one thing I could say, and maybe this sparks you further, is that I have worked with myself and I'm more aware of my patterns and my habits and my reactions and my past, and kind of have compassion towards this is how I show up because these things are part of my experience and my life. Then I have so much more space to meet the other because I don't bring all my past hurts and all my bullshit, all my stuff to the connection. And then I can be more open, like, hey, I'm curious about you. What is going on? I notice your face. Would you tell me what's up? Because I, at least personally, I'm really allergic to somebody telling me what is up for me. You're angry. You're upset. You didn't like that. Rather than, hey, I noticed something. Would you share with me? Or I imagine you are upset. Is that true? So these kind of open, more inviting things. And then that is for me inviting connection and curiosity and compassion towards the other. And I think compassion is really key. And it's not either or. It's compassion towards myself, and it's compassion towards the other. And when I am able to access both, I think then we are in an amazing place. So I don't think it has to be a choice between. But how I address the other is more with openness and curiosity rather than assuming.
And I wouldn't say that radical honesty is so focused on ourselves. It is very much about being in connection with other people and sharing what's alive for us in connection with them, including our curiosity or our questions, checking in with them, sharing with us as Tuulia said, what we noticed about them and our imaginations, our thoughts, our beliefs, our interpretations about that. And then checking in with them.
And it reminds me of the saying that we cannot love others when we don't love ourselves. And the compassion is the same. If we don't have compassion with ourselves, how the heck can we have compassion with others? Because if we're in pain, if we're hurting, it's very difficult to have compassion with others.
I think that's true. And I think, though, the good news, in my opinion, is that healing happens in relationships. So even though I had bad relationships in the past, or I was treated badly, or I allowed myself to be treated badly, I can still heal in a new connection. And even if I'm not fully in peace with myself, I can have that experience of healing when somebody's truly seeing me, when they truly want to be there with me, when they truly want to witness me, then the healing happens. And I don't need to be yet perfectly ready or perfectly love myself or have full compassion for myself. So also there can be this gift in the connection of just healing, growing, and then the transformation can happen within me because the connection is so nourishing and safe.
I want you to say another word about going back to your question, Miriam, about people learning this practice of radical honesty and expressing yourself to others who may not be aware of this practice, because that's common. That's for all of us, myself included, going to one of these workshops, feeling like, wow, among these strangers in this room, I can express anything. And now I'm really energized. I can't wait to get home and talk to my partners, talk to my friends, talk to my coworkers, talk to my family, in this newfound way of expressing myself. And for some people, that's a bit, whoa, I'm not ready for that. As you shared some of the things about can make yourself vulnerable in that moment, how it is for you, or but something about the dynamic can shift with the relationship just by sharing about yourself. You speak on that better than I do.
Yeah, we just actually, was it yesterday? Somebody asked about this.
Yesterday.
We had a call and then somebody asked, so how is it? I'm sharing. Yeah, we were talking to a group and then somebody who we didn't know said that, I go and share and then I'm not like received really very well. And they are not really like either wanted to hear me or don't like change or want to respond. And my answer to that person and in general is that when there's a dynamic, there's two people. One person is changing, everything is changing because the dynamic is changing. So it's not that the other one needs to do anything or needs to be in any way or needs to be any different. When I'm kind of feeling empowered to speak up and take care of myself, and it can be in any way, it could be anything I need to share. It doesn't need to be anger or something like that, but just whatever is real for me. Maybe the other one doesn't like it or they're puzzled or it's new for them or whatever. But me just standing up for myself is already changing everything for me. Like my full experience is changed. And then there might be that the other one is more open or they're not. But that's on the other. Like that's your business and my business is how I show up.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I can impact.
And as you said earlier, the sort of the openness or this new or different way of expressing oneself often is an invitation to the other. If not an outright invitation, then something implicit. Oh, you're now open to talking about these things. This is a place, this is a relationship where we can talk about these kinds of things. My experience of going back to 20 or 25 people in my life before I started doing this work and talking to them about the things that were still troubling me from the past regarding them, past things I was angry about in the past, things I was sad about, things that were unfinished for me worrying about having guilt about how they regarded me, if they were angry at me, checking in with them about that, me feeling guilty with my brothers and sisters, for example, them caring for our parents in their final years while I was on another continent and I wasn't there, checking in with them about that, going into those very conversations that I had avoided for years and finding that people were quite receptive, even though I had a story, my family, we don't talk about emotions. That's not to us. Yet somehow I created that story. Maybe, yes, I grew up in that family environment, yet I was still co-creating that environment. And so it's like, what happened if I start sharing my emotions and start talking about the family secrets, the things that are still troubling me decades later? And I was quite surprised that the reception was quite open and positive. seemed like everybody else was waiting for someone to take the first step. And as Tuulia mentioned this, if one of us
already changed the dynamic. Speaking.
Once I took a step, the others took a step. And that's what hasn't been the case with everyone. One friend told me, like, the openness, the honesty, that's not really much for me. I'd rather you go back to withholding your thoughts from me. And so in that case, I had a choice to make. Do I want to go back to hiding myself from this person, or do I want to continue having the friendship do I want to have the friendship and hide myself, or do I want to be open and lose their friendship? Mm. Well, I chose the latter. I'd rather be open with everybody in the world. And if one person chooses not to be friends with me, okay. I mean, I was sad about that and grieved the loss of that friendship. And I'm happy now that all my friendships, I can be who I am. I can share who I am. And I welcome all my friends to be who they are with me.
Yeah. Are there gradients? Do you teach or train radical honesty for business? Because Tuulia, you mentioned at some point that, okay, sometimes it's not appropriate and you rather maybe want to talk to a chair. So what would be your advice or your opinion on using it in the business context?
Well, I think there is ways to do it and applications, and I have gone to some workplaces and teams to work, and what we normally, well, for example, one place where I went regularly, we just had an open sharing round. So first round was, how are you doing right now? And I always ask the bosses to start. So of course you cannot ask something of people working for you to do that you're not willing to do. So they kind of shared first, and quite like personally and vulnerably, like also things that were like tricky in their private lives or what had happened. And then other people followed. And then we had some questions like, what is struggling? What do you struggle with in this workplace, or what is going great for you? And so this was one way to do it. In some other places, we have done also like 5-minute sharing, so people get used to just taking a bit of time to share how you're doing right now. And it also can be very effective actually for the organization, because rather than having the emotions and disputes and whatever struggles still lingering there's space where you can share, okay, my brother is suffering from alcoholism and this is really impacting my life. And then I have my 5 minutes to share to somebody about it. And then we kind of park it and do our stuff. So I think it's totally possible to use these tools in a workplace. And then there is some limitations, like, of course, if you're a boss, you don't go to everybody working for you and launch in anger. That might not be the right concept, but you can talk about things that are troubling you and then hearing the other. And maybe in those situations, you have a facilitator, because for the other one to receive it might not feel very safe to speak up, for example, if there's hierarchy.
In general, in our workshops, it's 16 individuals, and it's non-hierarchical between them, the workshop participants. And so people do get a flavor of what it's like to actually share themselves, express themselves, especially express their anger in this non-hierarchical situation. The workplace is different. There is a power imbalance. Mm-hmm. You may learn in our workshops to express your anger. If you express your anger to your boss, that person does hold power over you. Has the ability to affect your work life, or if not, to outright fire you or demote you or something, even if it's a personal thing. So it is different. This practice is different in the workplace. And we have had people fired from their jobs, and at the same time, they judged that was the best thing for them and realized they were miserable at work. They let it out. There are some consequences to them letting it out. Wasn't maybe great in the moment, and yet in the long run, they realized, oh, why did I stay in that job that I was miserable at, that I was so angry at? It's much better that I took that step to... So there are consequences when there's that power imbalance. Or even if you're sharing about, the things that are troubling you in life. Some workplaces, they're like, this is not the place for it. I want you to create these widgets and put this nut on that bolt. I don't care about your dog dying last night.
Yeah, I think I think you're talking a little bit on extreme situations. Like, okay. I would propose, if teams want to take this up, that is not just individual. There is a container. Like, we have this amount of time, and these are the kind of things we do. And there is sharings and exercises that are totally suitable for workplaces. And it can really enhance, in my opinion, the well-being of people. And for example, when I wasn't doing this work and I was as a boss in an organization, what I implemented was when we had Monday meetings, we had sharing rounds, and it was not only like what is going well around, but also what is not going well. And that came from the team. Like people didn't want to only have the up. So it actually created happiness to have that space where everybody could share what is not going well, and they could share what level. So it could be something like, yeah, I didn't sleep so well, to the extent that, I'm about to break up with my partner and I'm really miserable, or I notice I'm a bit depressed right now. So anything. So also not having like this expectation level, because we are different as individuals and people need to choose for themselves. So I think there is great benefits and it needs to be considered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You have more experience of actually being in office. I've never even worked in an office in my life.
Yeah.
But I do love your story about when you were more open and direct with your employer, your boss. I want you to share that story.
Yeah. At some point when I started to, I was studying to become a honesty trainer, I was studying to be a therapist, and I was still in my old career, I kind of came to a realization that I want to be myself no matter what in a workplace. And that might mean that they don't want me there no longer. And that's okay. But I'd rather be myself than like jeopardize, because this is just the life I have and I don't want to live it in the way that is not serving me and doesn't feel right. So I decided I'll speak up when something doesn't feel good to me or I disagree. And that meant that sometimes in meetings I was the only one who said to our boss that, yeah, I don't agree with that plan, or the timetable is far too strict, or something like that. And sometimes it was a bit scary, and I did it because it just felt okay. And I think sometimes it was other people who had similar feelings and they didn't dare to speak up. And then the boss said to me one time that, yeah, you're the only one who I truly fully trust, because when you say it straight, I don't have the suspicion that you go around and talking behind my back.
As opposed to all the yes people in the office.
Yeah, because of course there can be a lot of gossip and blamey language behind people's back, and that's, in my experience, quite typical in some office environments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for me, it really speaks to owning it and having this confidence, because I think a boss who would suffer from imposter syndrome, being afraid that you want their job, will not be as open to this kind of clear language and criticism. But if someone is comfortable and confident in themselves, they appreciate it.
Yeah, and I do think that boss didn't always like it. It wasn't always like, oh, wow, thank you so much. And I also tried to say it in the way that it wasn't like nasty, but really to the point, and owning it, that this is my perception. Yeah, and I also had an experience where I had a boss who I think was not behaving always really nice, like lashing their topics to some of us. And then, yeah, sometimes I spoke up, and sometimes I was able to just also access some compassion, like, oh, this person acting out in this way, there must be something really, really sad and troubling in them. And I could sometimes even see them as a little person, like a little child, just really acting out. So I also use other tools just to access, like, okay, this is really not about me. Like, here is me, and there somewhere far away is the other one who is having a bit inappropriate behavior in a workplace. And it's just, I can just be here because it's not really touching me anymore. And I can just find a way to, this is about something I don't understand what it's about, and there's nothing to do with me.
What remains a challenging situation for you when you facilitate these trainings?
Well, in a way, every workshop's a big challenge. I'm amazed each time we do it. And we've done, more than 160, 170 something in-person multi-day workshops and retreats, not counting all the online stuff we've done and shorter things we've done. And at the start of each one, I still tend to think, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, there's whatever, 12, 14, 16 people in this room. Most of them I don't know. I don't know anything about them. I don't know what's going to happen, yet I know in a few days from now we'll probably all be in a much better place together. And that means we have an open invitation to bring whatever's alive in any given moment for people. So things, of course, start a bit slow. And yet at some point, once people kind of get into the flow of it, things come pouring out and people sharing things they've never shared before with anyone in their life. People accessing their anger for the first time. A lot of the anger coming towards us. We're the ones who invited it. So, okay, you guys are the safe ones. So a lot of arrows are heading our way. And so it's a challenge, and it's amazing because over and over again, despite all the chaos, beside people crying, shaking, angry, loud, over and over again, it all so often leads to so much deeper connection and deeper love. I mean, love among strangers, that people who are strangers just a day or two before. Over just last weekend, hearing from someone saying, I know the people in this room better than I know my own friends. Mm. They don't only been there 2 days, and it's quite amazing. And not because we put on our best show for people, we actually showed what's really going on behind the scenes with us. So when you ask what's the challenge, it's the challenge of like, we're going to go through some shit here together. This is not going to be all roses and daisies and butterflies and rainbows every moment of this workshop. It's going to be some challenging moments for all of us. I don't know what's going to happen. I have this confidence that we'll get to a better place, and fortunately I have a lot of experience that we get to better places over and over again. Yet there was 1 or 2 times per workshop thinking, I don't know if we're going to get out of this one.
Yeah. It's like, oh no.
Can you share?
Like there is this like deep in me, I trust the process, and then there's that, and then it started to resolve on its own, kind of just people going through whatever was there, and they are going on a wave, and the whole group is kind of going on a wave, like, that was quite tense, and
can you share?
And then there was space to share.
Or maybe 2 people last weekend, 2 people being very angry at each other, and with my coaching, my facilitating, using all the tricks in my book of trying to get them to be specific about what the other person said or did that they're angry about, noticing their bodies, noticing the anger in their body. And yet they didn't want to be specific. They want to be with their judgments. They want to express all their judgments about the other person. And I think, well, okay, that's not a very vulnerable thing to do. I hear that you have the judgments. Let's save them for later. But right now, I just want you to stay with the emotion. But meanwhile, the other person's also very angry. And they also didn't want to, they just heard these judgments expressed to them. So they want to defend themselves. Like, okay, I hear you want to defend yourself, but let's stay with the emotion. And at some point I just thought, maybe these 2 are just too stuck. Maybe we're not going to get to a better place. I mean, oftentimes we say this practice works pretty good most of the time, and there's no 100% guarantee of all the time. And yet, when I did focus more on the one person, if there's something more vulnerable they could share about this, that they, for example, would want the other one to know about themselves. And they said, well, yeah, you do remind me of my mother. It does feel like I'm arguing with my mother, and my mother, this or that. And we explored that a bit. And then when I went back to the other one, like, yeah, I noticed while you were talking now that some of the things I was saying before is because I wanted to hurt you. And yeah, I was being very defensive. I can see that now. I own that now. And then some appreciation arose between them and some connection. And then they were sitting next to each other. And I was like, oh, curious. 5 minutes ago, I thought I'm not sure if we're going to find a way out of this. And now look at all this appreciation arising. So that's one example just from 4 days ago.
Yeah, and I was leading another workshop, and I had a very different experience where there was actually not very much anger, but a lot of like shame, guilt, sadness. So a lot of like people were turning things a lot inward, and sometimes I find that even more difficult because anger is like outside force, and I can just kind of release and let go and express. But then like going deeper and deeper, expressing like some self-doubt and that kind of thing can be kind of tricky. And in the end, I judge it worked out fine. But some things like being indoctrinated as a small kid, it's like takes a lot of like trust and decision and healing contacts. Also, like those recognizing that, yeah, one weekend doesn't fix this. This is like something so deep rooted and something for me very sad that some child needed to go through like some really tight regime of how they should be and how they're a bad person if XYZ and they will go to hell. Like, yeah, it's such a big thing. So also sometimes I was like being a bit humble, like these are huge issues that people had to live through. And like, wow, what a resilience that they are still alive and like being able to like function in this life. And still it's like this deep pain and deep hurt, and it needs a lot, and it's not something we can fix. So there can be a start of a journey or supporting that journey and more openness and more tools. And it's some things are just a lot to work through.
And with such a group, and I can see how it's more difficult to work with them because there's less to work with if everyone stays silent. So from a facilitation point of view, how do you then deal with it if nobody speaks? And if you can sense that it's about shame, guilt, and sadness?
Well, sometimes when we open the circle for general sharing, what's alive in people, what that we want to support them so they're not alone with recurring thoughts, that they're somehow distancing themselves from the rest of us. Very, 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 very rarely is there silence. Somebody says one little thing, maybe even somebody says something pretty minor, like, yeah, I don't like the way you're fidgeting. That's just enough of an opening where that's all we need. And also, as you kind of mentioned earlier, so much is about ourselves when we talk about someone else. So people, once they pick up on that, it becomes a bit of a joke because they have some judgments, they have something they want to share about something else. And then when we sort of stick the mirror in front of them, okay, what's going on here? How is it personal to you that you have this story about that other person? Or what's in it for you that they should be different? What's going on in you? And many of us think, no, this is good because I'm focused on them. Come look, everybody, the spotlight is over there. And we're very good at
move it immediately, like
we're very good at moving the spotlight back to the person who spoke up. And once the workshop gets rolling, then people very much it's not the challenge to get people to talk. It's the challenge is actually how do we accommodate everybody who wants to speak? Because if we have 16 people and there's 16 different emotions going on and 16 different things, that can be the challenge more to get people to speak less.
I mean, there is the more quiet ones or the more reserved ones. So sometimes we make invitations like, oh, I notice you haven't been talking so much. Is there something you want to say to this? Or if we notice something happening in their face or in their body language, we might check in like, hey, there was a shift here, or you're looking different now. Is there something going on? And in the end of the day, we cannot force. So we make invitations, and then of course we do paired exercises. So for some people that is better format, more safe, more intimate, more connected. So also I remind myself that I'm not in charge of people's experience. I cannot like control. And that also goes to somebody who was a bit more on the quiet side of the workshop. Then they come back and say, oh, that was an amazing experience. And whereas I couldn't see all of that from the outside. So it's I am not there in people's inner worlds. I don't know what is there. So all I can do is just offer the format, offer the space, offer the container, make sure that there is like some management and facilitation. So not only certain people are talking, so also sometimes asking somebody to be quiet, and then somebody who talk less want to talk, then maybe give a bit of priority to them. And that's what I can do. And then the rest is kind of trust the process.
Yeah, this idea of the quiet ones in the workshop, I can identify with that since I was the quietest one in my first radical honesty workshop as a participant. And even though I was saying very little, a whole lot was going on in me, and I was quite moved and was moved for many days afterwards. And so much shifted in me with my communication style and how I was relating to other people, or even this idea that we touched on earlier, appreciations. A friend of mine 2 days later, who I was a roommate with in university 20, 30 years earlier, happened to be passing through town. And now with this newfound way of expressing myself, I expressed appreciation after appreciation after appreciation to him about the things he did and said years earlier, about all these songs he had written back then and the way he was and how what a good friend he was for me. So yeah, I can relate with the people who are quiet. Just because they're quiet doesn't mean that there's not a lot going on in them. And we also ask people when there are a facilitation going on, we're facilitating conversation between two people or even between someone in an empty chair. They're talking to someone in their life who's not present in the room, quite often a parent or ex-partner or something. We still ask people to notice what happens in them, in their bodies, physically, or what's happening with their thoughts, their memories, their emotions. So even though the focus of the facilitators of me and Tuulia might be on one or two people at a time, we're inviting the whole group. Still do your own work. Still notice what's happening in you, especially if you'd rather be looking out the window and not pay attention. What's going on there? What are you trying to avoid? And then we try to make space for them to share about that as well.
I'm aware that we are running over time, and I have one more question, if I may.
Sure.
And I have an entire book full of questions that I haven't asked. What is the one thing that you wished you had known before? Or what would be your advice to your younger self?
Is it facilitator or just in general in life?
If you have two answers, I take them both. Otherwise, the facilitator is good enough.
Well, for me, I would have, to be more open about myself in the beginning, that actually sharing about my personal stories and my life in an open way where I don't make it about me, but use me as an example. And also then sharing openly if I'm nervous or uncomfortable or have stomach ache or something. So just being more open about my person. Yeah, nowadays I do it, and somehow in the early days I didn't quite find a way or confidence, or I was fixed to a role that I mainly saw in others, which was more this professional role, and I wish I would have allowed myself to break free. And it's also the same learning goes for my personal life. Like I'm a parent of a 22-year-old, and I wish I would have shown earlier on more of myself to my child, not in a way of burdening them, but just being a little bit more real rather than just overly caring, like always focus on my son. So yeah, just like showing.
If I may ask a follow-up question, why is that? What is the benefit of that? So what have you observed shifted because of that?
I think people actually are more open to receiving my facilitation when they see me as a real person. And then giving actual real life examples they can more relate to what I'm trying to convey as an ideas and options and ways of being. And it's just more relaxing. Like I have this role of facilitator. We agreed on it, and you paid money for me to do it. And I'm also a human being. So I'm not pretending I know it all and I'm perfect package or something. But like I have the same struggles that any human does. So more eye level.
For me, your question about what I would have wanted for my younger self, non-facilitator would simply be, or my advice to my younger self, go and do your personal work. Therapy and all this kind of stuff, emotional expression is not as scary as you think it is. Yeah, I'm embarrassed that I spent too many decades thinking I had it all together, or more so, scared to see what's really going on under the hood in the engine for me. Scared that I wouldn't like what I saw there, and so try to keep a lid on that. And so it was a big challenge for me to just open up in the first place, and I wish I would have done that earlier in my life. As a facilitator, I've been trying to think, as Tuulia spoke, what came to me was earlier when Tuulia was still far more the lead facilitator and I was the secondary facilitator, a role that I more created for myself, not necessarily one that Tuulia imposed upon me. That became a topic in one retreat among the participants. They were saying, hey, we want you to be, somehow you're hiding behind Tuulia. you're not even putting your name on the announcement for this retreat. It was only Tuulia's name on the announcement for this thing, and yet you are here and you are a facilitator. And I had all sorts of stories like, yeah, and I enjoy not having the responsibility, put all the responsibility on Tuulia's shoulders. And then having that experience out loud, in front of the participants was quite scary for me, and quite, we were talking about putting the spotlight on other people, and now the participants were putting the spotlight on me, and I couldn't wiggle out of it. And something did shift for me. Like, yeah, what is it about me that where I want to hide or not fully own the responsibility? And since that moment in Greece, something shifted for me. Like, oh, I do want to step into my power or whatever. I do want to take responsibility. Now, when matters of responsibility arise in the workshop, instead of looking around the room like, oh, who else can take over here? Step up. It's me. That I liked how second nature it is for me to now. We talked about the challenges of walking into the room, and who knows what's going to arise, and there are all these emotions arising, especially the anger. And instead of shying away from it, that I step into it and own my responsibility, my role as facilitator, and take that role very seriously. I don't know if I would do anything differently. I think I had to go through that process when I went through it. I love that story, though. So thank you for the opportunity for me to share it.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to walk me and the audience through radical honesty. If someone wants to reach out to you, find you, we'll put the link to Radical Honesty Europe in
honestyeurope.com.
honestyeurope.com.
Yes.
Yep.
Into the show notes with all the other links that you would like to share with us.
Thank you very much.
Great. Good talking to you. It's always actually very inspiring. New thoughts come up. Just talking and exploring.
I appreciate you for this conversation, and I appreciate you for the look on your face right now. And I appreciate you for your hairdo right now.
Yeah, very cool.
And I liked your questions.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I'm honored that you would want to talk to us, especially at such length.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for staying tuned and for listening until the very end. I hope that you found the inspiration and the wisdom that you are looking for. And I hope that you will subscribe to the show so that you never miss any of the interviews with another inspiring facilitator from across the world. I'm devoted to continue this podcast and to deliver weekly an episode that maintains the quality that you expect and you deserve. And if you would like to help me to maintain this quality and to keep the podcast free, please help us. Visit workshops.work/support to make a small donation to keep the podcast free. Thank you so much. I hope to be in your ears next week.